My name is Kimbra, and this is my developmental history. I was born the baby of my family, much younger than all of my brothers or cousins. I was also my parents' only daughter. As an infant, I experienced Erickson's first stage of identity formation, during which I depended completely upon my parents and developed a sense of trust rather than mistrust. Later, as a toddler, I entered the autonomy versus shame and doubt stage, which I feel I passed through with confidence in my ability to do things independently, even though I was very sheltered and protected by my parents as a baby and the only daughter. I also went through Piaget's sensory motor stage during this time period. I developed object permanence and quit enjoying the peekaboo game when I was about 1 year old. I went through the first three of Vygotsky's stages of language development between my birth and turning 3 years old. After the pre-intellectual speech and autonomous speech stages, I quickly picked up adult words while in the naive psychology stage. However, I often mispronounced these words, such as saying Dorothy rather than Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. I was also in the first stage of Kohlberg's pre-conventional stage of moral development. My actions were guided by a desire not to be punished by my parents. From preschool through 8th grade, I attended a small private Christian school. I also spent a lot of time by myself around adults because all of my siblings were so much older than me. During my preschool years, I was in Piaget's pre-operational stage of cognitive development, in which I understood what needed to be done to complete actions, but didn't know how to do it by myself. I learned how to ride a bike without training wheels during this stage, first going through the zone of proximal development with my dad holding onto the seat to keep me from falling over. Then later I was able to do it by myself without his help. I also reached Vygotsky's fourth stage of language development during this time period and began using communicative speech, but I did not talk very much. I remember staying quiet so I could listen and learn from my older brothers and cousins what and what not to say. As far as moral development, I progressed to sometimes using the second level of Kohlberg's pre-conventional stage, acting out of self-interest. Depending on the situation, I would make decisions based either on avoiding punishment, self-interest, or both. During elementary school, I reached Piaget's concrete operational stage of cognitive development, probably somewhere around 2nd grade. I also came to prefer individual work to group work during this time. I believe the time that I spent alone or studying the behavior of other people, both adults and children my own age, also contributed to the current much higher strength of my interpersonal and intrapersonal intelligences. It also moved me into the first level of Kohlberg's conventional stage of moral development, so that now I would act either to avoid punishment, fulfill self-interest, or make people like me, depending upon the situation. I excelled academically and began to develop a fixed academic frame that has persisted into the present. I received my first and only B in history in 4th grade, and for a very long time after that I avoided history and convinced myself that I wasn't good at it. In middle school, I entered Piaget's formal operational stage and began developing long-term goals and values, although these later experienced radical changes during my identity socio-emotional stage in high school. I acted largely upon the love and belonging and the esteem needs in Maslow's hierarchy of needs by spending every moment that I wasn't reading or riding my bike with my friends. I also continued to operate on the first three stages of Kohlberg's moral development depending on the situation. I acted on my desire to get people to like me most often, but still sought to avoid punishment by doing my homework, behaving in class, and accepting the rules and ideals that the school taught me. In high school, I experienced the most drastic changes to my identity in Erickson's identity versus identity confusion stage. I went to a public high school where I was exposed to many more ideas and perspectives. My sophomore year, I quit believing in God and completely changed my goals and values in life. I came to develop cold cognition skills and did not act on impulses without making thorough plans and considering the consequences first. I also moved into the second level of Kohlberg's conventional stage of moral development and mostly followed rules in order to maintain function and peace in the classroom and at home. I also discovered that I enjoyed and was good at writing papers, especially those concerning literature or social analysis. I realize now that this preference was probably a result of the strength of my and interpersonal intelligences. My senior year, I learned through independent research a lot about intersectional radical feminism and decided it was something in which I wanted to be involved, which yet again altered my identity and also caused me to begin acting upon Maslow's self-actualization needs, which in turn made me feel like a more complete and productive person. I believe I am still going through Erickson's identity stage now in college, but my identity is more complete and is no longer changing quite as radically as it did in high school. I also continue to act upon my self-actualization needs more and more. I'm still developing cognitively as well. as I have come to use critical analysis type thinking much more in college than I ever had before. I still tend to jump between Kohlberg's different stages of moral development, depending on the situation at hand. For instance, I no longer respect rules or laws that I feel are prejudiced or in some way unjust, which brought me up to the first level of Kohlberg's post-conventional stage, but I still do my homework and go to class because I want to avoid the punishment of a bad grade. However, I'm much less likely now to act upon a desire to get people to like me, and typically feel more comfortable speaking up about my beliefs. As a future middle secondary social studies teacher, it is important that I can gauge and understand where each of my students is at developmentally in order to foster engaging and respectful classroom discussion about important and controversial social issues. The areas of socio-emotional, cognitive, and moral development are particularly important in this discipline because those areas largely affect how adolescents behave and interact with one another. Adolescents tend to experiment with a wide variety of identity roles and relationships, struggle with types of thinking that involve strong emotions, and make decisions based on getting other people to like them, all of which will affect their behavior and their ability to participate respectfully in a dialogic classroom. As an educator, I will have to understand the origin of these behaviors and be able to accommodate for them in my teaching styles.